it's clearly something that is not some foreign idea, or we kind of feel like it's something that we're that other people wouldn't understand. Nobody could know how crazy I feel, or how weird this feels, or how bad this feels. But it turns out there's a whole lot of people that know just how it feels.
All right, all you ladies and Germans, we got a great episode today with a friend, and I'm not just saying this because he's on the podcast. He's one of the best singer-songwriters of the last 20 years, in my opinion. His music has been featured everywhere and critically adored by everyone that matters. He truly, look it up if you have never heard of Langhorne Slim. Today you're going to get to know him in a way that I've never gotten to know him as a human, as an artist. We talk about personal battles that he's had in his career with substance abuse, with addiction. We talk about the creation process, from everything from a song to a live performance with an audience. It is a really touching, open conversation with one of the best singer-songwriter storytellers out there. So I'm really excited for you all to get to hear from Sean Skolnick, aka Langhorne Slim. Today's episode, Below the Line. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
What timing?
Oh, great timing
Good to see you, brother.
Mr. Beautiful. Your cat, how old's your cat?
Oh, man, I got him right before we had a big tornado in Nashville where I live, like a week or 2 weeks before the pandemic, and I got him right before the tornado. So however long that would be, like 2.5 years.
Oh, that's awesome. Beautiful cat. And so you're in Nashville, and I was just about to ask you, when's the next time you're coming to LA?
I don't know. Nothing on the books at the moment. I leave for a tour first thing tomorrow morning, but it's the South and East Coast.
I saw that. I was looking up the dates a few weeks ago to see if you're going to play anywhere near here. Well, I would love to get you out here.
I think after the summertime.
Okay.
I'm going to go on a bigger band tour, and I'm pretty sure that'll take us out that way.
Well, there's so many areas that I want to touch on with you around. You and I have chatted over, really, especially over the last year and a half. We've touched base on numerous occasions and talking about it's a lot of different things. Touched on a lot of different things. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to get to have, where other people can peer in as well. And one of the things I did want to touch on is right on topic for you gearing up to go on tour. I'm sure all your musician circles, everybody feels like they've probably said everything there's to say of going on tour right after the pandemic. But for those of us that aren't musicians, that don't know what any of this emotional arc has been like the last 2 years, and with you now gearing up to go on tour tomorrow, where's your head at this lovely Monday right before going on tour tomorrow?
My head is halfway in my ass and the other half out of my ass. So I'm able to breathe some fresh air. But yeah, a day before tour is usually slightly chaotic internally.
How so?
So yeah, as you could tell by me being at lunch when we were supposed to be starting the interview and things along those lines. Some of my signals are crossed, but I'm super excited to go out. I mean, I had a little bit more of a head start than some friends who I've talked to about getting back out on the road, because as soon as things kind of opened up again, I got a chance to do some great shows. And coming right out of the gate, one of my favorite things and places to play in the world is Newport Folk Festival, and I got to do that. And I got to open up for a friend's band, the Avett Brothers, at Red Rocks, which is like a dream kind of a show and place to play. And so like right out of lockdown, shortly thereafter, I was having these kinds of, I can't remember what the month or what that exact time frame was, but there was like a sweet spot where it almost seemed like we were in the clear, even though in the back of my mind, and I think probably in the back of others' minds, it was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're leaning into a delusion here. I don't think we're totally good quite yet. But I had those shows which were amazing, and then have been able to do some other stuff and travel a bit. So it's fascinating how adaptable, we could talk for an hour on that sort of idea. But one, during lockdown, and I think there's reasons for all that in a personal place for myself and what I was going through and all that kind of thing. But I was sort of shocked and I don't know if I was frightened by it. I was just, I didn't really miss the road in a way that I would have thought had somebody said, this is going to be taken away from everybody for a while. It's the only thing I've ever done in my adult life, since I'm in my early 20s. And I didn't feel that like insatiable itch to do it. I think a lot of people with whatever one does went through some version of this, as far as what was life like then, what am I figuring out about myself or my place in this place now, being at home. It was my first time being at home for that long, since I was a child. And then how to sort of carry that out into what we do next. So I was sort of surprised that I wasn't longing to do it. And then as soon as I got back on the road, even briefly, we stay at like the same hotel for 20 years. It's those places off the interstate that everybody stops and gets gas and fast food. And, it's like heartbreaking in one way. And then it's oh so familiar and oh so American is like you have your Chick-fil-A and your Mobil station and your Holiday Inn Express. And no matter where in this country you are, if you get off the interstate at a certain place, you're there. And that there, we don't even have to pass any judgment on it, has been my home, more than my home, like where I am right now, for so long that as soon as I was in the parking lot about to check into the first hotel, I was like, oh, I could breathe again. I'm home at last. And then, of course, as soon as I walked into the first music venue, it felt that way too. And then just, playing in front of people and reminding, I don't know if it's ego stuff, man, or what, but I think it's something higher. I think it's like a divine dance floor that we get to share through music and art that brings people, we can get into some of that if we want, but it's like looking out into a crowd and seeing people sing along and seeing people smiling and making eye contact and maybe shedding, at least for an hour or so, a lot, some of the weight that we've all been carrying through the experience of connecting through music is such a powerful thing that getting that reminder again that this thing actually works and will always work as long as there's people to gather in community in that way, that it got me really excited. That's a long answer.
No, that's
for whatever the question was.
Well,
but yeah,
for this conversation, I want long form answers on everything. I think everybody tuning in wants the long form answers because
it's what they're going to get here. I've never figured out how to make it too precise.
Well, I've seen you several times over the years, and you are one of the things that I knew was going to be a lot of fun with this conversation and really just becoming friends over the years is how great of a storyteller you are. And I want to get to that in a bit, but just touching on that, there's a big aspect of do you think a big aspect of you not being that, or you being okay with taking a little bit of a break, is that from touring for 20 years? Is that, was that just like, oh, this is a fresh and unfamiliar, but a pleasant feeling of getting a break? Was it as simple as that, or was it maybe even more complex?
It was even simpler and more complex at the same time. It happened sort of in, it felt like sort of cosmic timing. I mean, as you know a little bit about my personal, journey and all of that.
Do you mind sharing whatever you're comfortable
No,
sharing?
no, I don't mind at all. Um, yeah, so I got sober here in Nashville where I live about 8.5 years ago, and then I got uh, with that I never did any therapy. I never did any 12-step program. I never really connected with other folks to kind of learn a tool or two on how to live. And so I wound up going through some stuff, as we all do, and I got prescribed some anxiety medication that is addictive, and I got very addicted very quickly to that, and then spiraled and started doing all kinds of shit that I once did, and some shit that I didn't even used to do. And it was right before, again, it was right several months before the tornado and the pandemic hit that I was living out west, out in Los Angeles for about a year. And I decided to come home, and right when I thought when I got home, my idea was, this stuff is so wild, the thinking. My idea to go out to California was, okay, I'm going to go out to California. I'm going to get over this relationship that I wasn't able to get up. I was going to sort of try to ghost the ghosts of the relationship, if that makes sense. I could feel it everywhere I went. And so I was like, I'm going to get out of Dodge. I'm going to go out west. I'm going to do yoga and drink green juice. And I'm going to finish a record. And I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to meet a, beautiful hippie lady or something, whatever my ideas were. And they're fanciful ideas. I got a few of them. And then what we find, I think, I'll speak for myself, is that I bring myself wherever I go. Like that old saying my grandpa Sid used to say, and we've seen it on bumper stickers: wherever you go, there you are. And that was the truth. And the issues that I was trying to run away from kind of just grew and grew and grew. And I was falling deeper into, old patterns and taking a lot of substances. And shit got really, really dark. And finally I decided I was going to come home in the same sort of fashion. Well, I got sober here in Nashville once, years and years, years ago. I'll come back home and I'll get healthy again, and I'll work on my music, and everything will be okay when I get home. And of course, when I got home, it was still me, and I realized, it was more than I could do on my own. And that was the first time that I had just made a call. I called my mom, I called my manager, I called some real close friends, and I just said, here's what's going on, and I need to get some help this time. And so I did. I went into treatment. I got out. I started to really connect, be a member of a 12-step program and community here in Nashville. And that was challenging, of course, but it was super empower. I don't know. It felt great to finally say out loud, here's what's going on. And not that it was a huge surprise to anybody that was around me. They all knew that I was deeply struggling, but for me to say it and to say, I think there's so much fear too of like, what are these people going to think? Am I going to now lose my shows and my tours? Am I going to lose respect and love from whomever? I'd been lying at that point for a while, because anybody around me, I was telling them that I was sober and I was doing just fine, when it was very clear to anybody who was close to me that things weren't fine. So
I bet were there other artists that you were also like guiding through sobriety, or people that you felt like would be really disappointed if they found out the truth?
I think what it is like the same reason that you can't, it's like cliche, but it's true. Like you can't quit for other people. I think it was the shame that I felt about myself and the negative thoughts and feelings that I had for myself that so far outweigh, uh, I think especially the people that love us, man, all they want, like, what do you want for your friends and your family? You want people to be healthy and happy and um, to be alive, truly alive. Um, so as soon as I turned that over and just said, I feel like a dead man walking, I felt very unalive. And I don't know how to repair this on my own. I don't know if that's like some male kind of shit that we learn in society, or if it's human stuff, or whatever it is. It's like, it's why I'm so open to talking about this. I wouldn't have ever thought 2 years ago or 3 years ago that this would be something I would be like, sure, love to jump into this. But it's so not unique. There are issues that are shared, it's like when I was a drinker, I kind of thought most everybody drank a lot, because when I was around buying bottles of wine and crushing them and getting drinks for everybody, people were having a big time. Now when I'm open and reveal this part of my life, which is a huge part of my life at this point, so many people open up to me about that, or ask me, how it's going, or how have I gotten to how did you get sober, or how do you deal with your anxiety or depression, or just sharing, their story with me. So it's like, it's clearly something that is not some foreign idea, or we kind of feel like it's something that we're that other people wouldn't understand. Nobody could know how crazy I feel, or how weird this feels, or how bad this feels. But it turns out there's a whole lot of people that know just how it feels.
That little ding is the sound of cold, hard, digital, invisible cash going right into your pocket. And by pocket, I mean your digital Shopify account that might be on your phone in your pocket. At least that's the case for us in Magic Mind. Shopify allows you to go from first sale to full scale, and it has for us. Magic Mind has one full-time employee, and we've gotten to 5 million in annualized sales using Shopify. Me, William, amazing GM, and Shopify. It is the no-brainer for any e-commerce stack that you've ever thought of. If you're selling online and you're running into issues left and right, Shopify is a solution. If you're thinking of selling online, it is the dream scenario of being able to get your first sale, scale to millions in sales. And we haven't done this yet, but when we do move into physical retail, when we move into physical shops, start building our own, you can actually go from online with Shopify to offline with Shopify, and everything is in beautiful little dashboard on your phone. I love checking it. You can check it, as you're going to sleep. You just open it up and see your exact sales for the day. You even see tips on how to improve conversion rates, improve your store. Shopify is literally, when I say it's the dream, I mean it. It is the dream. And we've got a special hookup for listeners, so wait for that in a sec. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. This is one of my favorite parts about Shopify, is it has this ecosystem of thousands of third-party apps, developers and teams that are building awesome features for the Shopify ecosystem. So you're getting way more than just Shopify. You're getting thousands of applications built to refine the customer experience for all of your customers. We use probably 8 or 9 of these different apps that Shopify doesn't even build, but it's teams building for the Shopify ecosystem. And were we on a different platform, we just wouldn't have access to these thousands of third-party applications to make MagicMind.com so powerful. You gain insights as you grow with detailed reporting on conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/belowtheline, all lowercase, for a 14-day free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. And this is a unique offer for Below the Line. You're going to get something special when you sign up with that /below the line. So make sure to enter that It is not offered to everybody. So go to shopify.com/below the line, all lowercase. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/below the line, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/below the line. Today's episode is brought to you by Magic Mind. You've heard it on the podcast before. It is my favorite thing about the morning is when I get to take my Magic Mind, 12 magical ingredients that get you into flow state. It is, as Forbes put it, Silicon Valley's new morning elixir for so many reasons. It is, but for me, I'll just say the fact that I get dialed in, not amped up like an energy drink, but dialed into my work so quickly. It is basically just motivation, focus, energy, and de-stressing in a bottle. It's really, truly magical. Go to magicmind.co, magicmind.co, enter promo code BTL for below the line, BTL, to get 20% off of your first order and see if it works for you. You can literally tweet at Magic Mind, say whatever you didn't like about it, and you get a free refund. It is so easy to get a refund if you do not dig it. So there's really no reason to not try it and see if it is magical for you. You can go to magicmind.co/love just to see all of the public praise. Pete Holmes, the famous comedian, he doesn't stop tweeting about how magical Magic Mind is for him. So you'll probably see that if you look it up on Twitter. But if you've never tried it, go order it. It's promo code BTL for below the line to get 20% off. And again, you get a free it's easy refund if you don't dig it. Magicmind.co and start making magic. Yeah, that's the universal condition and turns out to be pretty universal. It's the reason I even, and we connected over Magic Mind, or reconnected over it a year and a half or two ago, and I started that because I was addicted to, I was chugging 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day, and when I was drinking 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day, and I was prescribed Adderall but didn't take it because it gave me thankfully it gave me a massive headache, but I would have been right on track for addiction to Adderall and amphetamines, and there's this element of me that remembers being like, oh, this is a joke addiction. This is like this is a pretend version, and I joke about it. And maybe similar to the drinking side of things, you find the 3 or 4 other people in the office that are just as addicted, and so you feel like there's a community, and there's 3 or 4, and we're all chatting about it. Then and our favorite coffees, and there must be like 30-40% of the office probably is. We just don't know the other ones.
The super sneaky part of that all is, you can have that idea for a while, and then by the time I'm like drinking in the shower or sneak into the refrigerator first thing in the morning to chug some whatever, it's kind of too late because I'm already dependent on it, and so kind of far down that road. So
yeah. And then I look back and I'm like 6 to 7 cups of coffee. It is still, obviously part of me recognizes there are worse addictions. But then a very large part of me looks back and just laughs at how insane that would look if I saw someone that was drinking. And I say 6, 7, it was 7, but I just say 6 to 7 because it blunts it a little bit. But that universal condition, it just is universal. When we talk about the deepest part of ourselves, that's the part that we're all craving to hear about. I don't think I know anyone that isn't wired for an addiction of some sort. I mean, we're human. We addict. That's what we do.
Yeah, and for me, the drugs and the alcohol. See, here's the thing that I've recently, in these last 2 years, through help, I've become excited about most of the time. Not that I'm thrilled about it all the time, but that there is no cure that I'm aware of, and that I was addicted for so long to find the cure, just to be in some sort of blissful, euphoric space, whether it be through music, art, relationships, drugs and alcohol, whatever. So that that there is the idea that life is something, if I have the desire to work on every day, and that just by doing this thing or that thing isn't. I thought the first time I got sober that was the creature that I had to confront, and if I was able to slay the beast, and this is the idea that I had for years, it's drugs and alcohol, that I got so far down the road with that stuff that if I was able to confront it and rid myself of that issue in my life, that then I would be the man that I've always known and dreamt of being. And what was I going to get from that? Because it was always about receiving something for that. And so the gifts that I would receive would be true love in a romantic form of a partner. My career would take off. And those are really the things that I've put for most of my life, that I've built this identity that I know myself as. So a lot of my life, I feel as good about myself as those things are going in my world, if that makes sense.
For sure.
If I'm doing well and got a partner by my side, and the music thing's going well. So what I found, that the addiction, maybe it's not even helpful to call it a beast or to be that negative about it. I don't know. I mean, that's the way I've always viewed it for myself. But the drugs and the alcohol were a huge one for me too. And I have to work on that every day to kind of stay away from that stuff. But yeah, just in the last year or so, it's become crystal clear that you're talking about coffee. I still drink a ton I'm still addicted to coffee. I'm still rolling my little cigarettes and smoking those. I find now that shows are coming back, I'll do this thing, and I don't know how this will sound, if it makes any sense here or not, but I'll do a thing where maybe the show is just starting and the opener is going on, and I'll peek out and I'll see the room isn't quite full, and I'll run over to my this is on my mind because I did it the other night.
Please.
And I'll run over to my tour manager and I'll be like, hey, how many tickets did we sell tonight? Where I know to myself, it's like, however many tickets were sold, we're here now. That's the whole idea, is just being right. As this is propped up on my Ram Dass Be Here Now book.
Oh, hell yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, it's like, what am I after by running in that sort of fearful moment and reacting to my life or my experience in that moment, to run and then get either validated by, oh, don't worry, man, it's sold out and they just all haven't come yet, or it's half full, or whatever it is. It's putting myself into these situations where you're almost only looking for trouble, as opposed to maybe it sounds corny, but I don't think it is. I think it's the ancient shit, which is like, one, how lucky am I to do this thing that I do, and to be, have a career in playing music. But it's just in that situation, for that example, it's like, and I do that when I'm on stage. I'm able to to get into that space and to be connected and grateful for that, for whoever is there. But before, you get into fear and probably are seeking some kind of comfort, some sort of validation.
And do you still get that? You've been touring and performing for 20 years. Is it, what has changed and what hasn't changed before a show?
Well, I mean, I used to spend the time before the show at whatever the closest Irish bar was, because I enjoyed those environments. Still do, but just not don't drink the stuff. Now, I try to meditate before the show. I go back to the hotel. I still have fear, of course. I still have anxiety, but the anxiety is more useful. It's like it's excitement and sometimes it's fearful anxiety. Before it would be, when I was younger, I would get sick before every tour.
Really?
I would feel like I was losing my voice before every record, before every tour, like very psychosomatic. The anxiety that I've dealt with in my life would, when it got to a certain point, would always sort of manifest into physical symptoms where I couldn't really tell if I was, am I sick? Do I have the flu? Do I have a sinus infection? Am I losing my voice?
Before launching anything product-wise, tech-wise, building companies, my lower back starts to hurt.
Yeah. So that's wild stuff. And so what I would do for years is medicate. Part of what I was doing was medicating that anxiety. And then the biatch of that is that works for a little while, at least for me, but then it exacerbates the anxiety tenfold. So yeah, my routine is different. I find also for the last 20 years or so, I mainly tour with a band, and coming out of the pandemic, I've been, just to kind of dip my toes back into the water, so to speak, I've been doing solo stuff. And the last record that I made over the pandemic is a little bit more suited for that. And so it's just me and a dear friend of mine who is like a brother and is my tour manager. And it's just, we'll see how this next tour goes, but it was sort of for how I've done it in the past, pretty stress-free and pretty stable, which is also a feeling that I have felt more recently. Not stable, steady, in between great highs and great lows. And that's a zone that I find a bit foreign and uncomfortable in and of itself. It's nice to be on the road in that, but to notice it, if I'm at home or going back to addictions, it's like being addicted to some kind of chaotic. I never thought I was like a drama queen person until I realized that I'm a drama queen person. If things are just kind of going well, I realize now, I'm in therapy and I'm looking at all this stuff, but it's like, yeah, I feel like I got convinced that maybe I thrive in some kind of a wavy situation.
Yeah, well, there's Alan Watts, a philosopher that I love. I mention on the podcast all the time. He said humans are just like, our minds are like sonar devices, just kind of like the submarine sonar device that's just going in its circular motion, looking for some bogey to watch out for. And we're just scanning and scanning and scanning. And it does not matter how many good things there are. That's not what the sonar is doing. And while it scans, deep beneath the sea, it really is just finding for what's wrong. What's wrong?
Yeah.
What's wrong? And it is another great philosopher that I love bringing up, Indian philosopher, A. Parthasarathi, that is my teacher that I study with. He's 94. I listen to his videos every morning, and his lectures from his ashram. And he says the two most important things to do every day for everyone is, the first is to question everything, and the second is to not take anything for granted. And they're kind of like cousins of. And I remember questioning everything when I first heard that. I remember feeling like, oh, this is like, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, yeah, question society. Like question,
Mm-hmm.
why do we do it this way? All these suits walking around. And after 3 weeks or so, then when you really are like questioning everything, every feeling you have, you start to question it. And you kind of rip through the external movie very quickly in 3 weeks. And then it's several years of just internal questioning, because those are obviously the things that are happening the observations that are happening much more often. Why do I feel this way? Oh, why do I feel so happy right now? What's going to be the cost of this, whatever ice cream high that I'm on right now, with a literal or metaphorical, 2 scoops in my hand? What's going to be the cost? Or why do I feel so down right now because of that rejection from an investor or a friend?
Yeah.
And
well, it's a new and exciting zone for me to be in, where I have that, even a little bit of that capacity to view it from above, or to have that kind of, why am I feeling this way right now? Where so much of my life it was feeling, reaction, thought, feeling, behavior, all in the same foul swoop. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it took me a while to get to it, but it does feel frustrating as a motherfucker sometimes, but also super cool and exciting to be able to kind of look at it and be like, okay, here's where we can dig in. Here's where we can learn something.
Right. Well, and that's the not take anything for granted kind of second pillar is like, okay, don't take anything for granted. Shit, okay, I can make a gratitude list of the things I'm thankful for, but what are the things that are the dots on that sonar that I would think I want to get rid of, and how can I not take those for granted and sit with those? And then it's a great ping pong of, okay, now question why I'm feeling it. Now don't take anything for granted. And it actually is the balancing act for that sonar that's scanning and finding the things that are wrong. The not take anything for granted also does just fill up a gratitude list in the morning pretty damn fast. If you're like, all right, I'm not going to take any of these things for granted. You got 2 minutes in, which is what I do each morning, and it's 20 or 30 things. But it's certain, that's the counteraction to the fact that it is so human for us to just scan and find the things that are wrong. And that's honestly probably the best performers, the highest performing individuals are the ones that have the strongest scanners, the ones that are so sensitive. They feel the pain from not being good enough in the macro sense, or not being good enough in the micro sense. Like, you probably got amazing at the guitar because of that sensitivity of, it's not good enough yet. It's not good enough yet. It's probably that sensitivity is the greatest strength and potentially.
Well, it's like the letter, the quote from the, I can't think of the dancer's name now, but that you sent to me.
I see that. I feel like I should. Do you mind reading that on the?
I don't have that. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, but what did you, I'll read it right after. But what did you think when I sent that to you?
I shared it with some friends of mine. I loved it. Well, one, I think it's not. It's not all good or it's not good or bad to like the not enoughness. But how can I talk about this in a way that'll make sense?
I'll read it for listeners just so they know what we're referencing, and then you can kind of give your take, because it was a really touching response when I sent this to you. And as an artist, I think, or creator, anyone out there, this is, pause the episode, Google some of these words if you want to read this yourself, and we'll also include a link. But it's so it's a letter to Agnes DeMille from Martha Graham. Says she's a choreographer, and it's so beautiful. She says, there is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. If you block it, It will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours, clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly of the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is no satisfaction whatsoever at any time. There is only a queer divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others.
So good. So beautiful.
So good, and it's so in a seemingly sad way, it's reaffirming of there is no satisfaction.
That's one part of it that I find reaffirming too, and sad. But yeah, but the other part, and I recalled this and shared it with some friends, but kind of kept it with me in my soul's pocket, if you will. The last tour that I did, when I would get kind of if I would get into negative thinking, or maybe I'm too tired to put on a good show tonight, or maybe my voice, or whatever this was, and just this kind of like, how dare you get in the way of this thing that you're here to do and equipped to do, and just get out of your own way. Because I think that that anxiety and the fear does come from, is it going to be good enough? Will the show be as good as it was last night? Or the show wasn't very good last night, so maybe I lost my edge or my touch or whatever. There's a billion examples of this kind of thinking. To kind of get out of, man, it was like how I wrote the last record over the pandemic too. It was kind of just getting into and buying into getting out of my own way, keeping it simple, where there were these flows of inspiration or music, to get in there and to not do it for with expectation, even, or like a tangible result as to, is the song going to be good enough to be on a record? Is the song going to be good enough to play on tour or whatever? It was just like childlike again, where, where we're all singers, and every little kid is a singer and a dancer and an artist and a beautiful freak. So we're all beautiful freaks on the inside. We have that wildness, that ancient thing. We all do. And then life, we get into these roles, and life does what it does. And so where I took that and going back to like how the sort of wave that I tried to ride for the songs that became the Strawberry Mansion record were to strip, and this is the trip that I'm really on lately, and maybe for the rest of my life, is to like start to strip back the identity that I have worked so hard to create, as to this guy who does this thing, and I sound like this and I look like this. And then what is there? Can I get back to the essence, because it's in there, of why I started to do it in the first place, which was just for the joy of hearing these strange and beautiful sounds that are music, and seeing if I could put these words together that make sense to myself, to music that I think is catchy and sounds good. And so, yeah, without blabbering too much and then again losing my train of thought, I love what she wrote in that. Yes, it reminds me that maybe it's okay to never feel fulfilled, but it also reminds me that of right where I am, where I'm so aware of kind of how I've perverted in ways this pure thing. But it's the pure thing that I want to get back to. It's not how many records that I'm selling, or how many people go like this, or
it's about, I guess, it's not letting the dissatisfaction, I guess, is reaffirming that it is normal, if not the only feeling, but also, to what you're saying, it's, don't let that get in the way of blocking this channel that will only exist once.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is such a powerful thing.
One of the things that you told me years ago, and by the way, for listeners, I think it's worth underscoring that I don't know if the anti-anxiety medications were benzodiazepines for you, but like benzos, they were, yeah, that's right after opiates. As soon as we start going after the next massive epidemic of overprescribed and extremely dangerous prescriptions, it's benzodiazepines and the anti-anxiety medication that can be 4 times as addictive as opiates and way gnarlier to get off of.
The only other thing except for alcohol that you could just drop dead from if you try to stop taking it cold turkey.
Oh wow!
I ran out of it I was on tour. This is going back some years, and that's when I already knew that I was in danger, but I had run out of it because I was taking so much, and I was touring in Europe, and I was in Norway, and didn't have it for a day or so, and was feeling like completely crawling out of my skin. My brain felt like it was breaking. A feeling that I felt a lot when I was trying to get off of that stuff. And I wound up in true addict nature, when I figured out a way to get myself to a doctor, and get in, before a show or something like that. And I said, hey, I'm on this medication and I've run out, and I'm just feeling, like I'm really feeling terrible. And he's like, we don't even prescribe this out here except to the most extreme cases of, terrible panic attacks or anxiety or something. He's like, in America, you guys prescribe this shit so freely, and it's super dangerous. He was like, please. He's like, I'm going to give you some because you could die if you don't take it. You could have a seizure. But when you get back to, when you get back home, it's like, go see your doctor and try to get off this if you can, because it's super, I don't want to make it that it's, I can only speak from my own experience. I'm sure for some people it's helpful,
no, but I think it's worth calling out just that you think someone in a white coat hands it to you and it's going to be totally safe. And yet in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to look back and be like, wait, what? We were directly what you just said. We were prescribing that to 20 million Americans.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And just knowing how difficult it was for me to get off it. I mean, it's also, for full transparency and for fairness sake, I don't take anything as prescribed. So that's why I can't drink or do drugs. And so I wasn't taking it, whatever the milligram was, every time I was having like some anxious episode. I was taking it every day, and quite a bit of it. So, yeah, I mean, I have, I don't know if we want to get into this, but I certainly have big issues with big pharma and how, in my opinion, things are horrifically overprescribed. I also can't take myself out of that equation and victimize myself, because I did put myself in a situation knowing that I have the tendencies that I have, and did take all this stuff excessively. So, well, that certainly led to my issues.
One of the guests on the podcast, Eric Reese, likes to use the phrase of sometimes there are situations where there's 200% responsibility to go around, and everyone can take their 100% equally, and that could be the case for that. But I do look at the opiate crisis, and maybe part of that has been overblown, but the benzodiazepine overprescription, and knowing people that had no idea the seemingly one-way door they were walking into when they got a prescription. And
from my view,
I know
an
8-year-old,
it's not given, none of it's given enough attention. It is so gnarly out there right now.
The other thing that I was going to say before saying that, and just underscoring that for the audience, and I can't imagine how hard that was for you to get off it. And actually, one last question on that. Did you feel like your work would suffer by being sober at all? Did you ever feel like, shit, I'm going to be out of the zone?
Yeah, both times I got sober, but the irony and the beast of all of that is that a big part of why I drank and took drugs to begin with, and then a part of why I started taking drugs again was to, I guess, to simplify it, quiet my mind and warm my heart, so to speak. And that's when I feel like I'm able to access my creativity more. So, and drugs and alcohol work too. They're not all bad. If they were all bad, none of us would use them and it wouldn't be a problem. I've had great times and have written songs drunk, and I've, done some fine things high. Nobody got hurt and it was all good. But it's the way in which I use it where, for instance, like the benzos and other things that I was taking during my relapse time, that shit didn't make me feel creative. So I wasn't able to finish. I was working on a record out by where you are, out in LA. I wasn't able to finish it. I wasn't writing nearly as much music as I had, most of my life. And then I had tremendous fear that by quitting, I would, which sounds insane now, but I had tremendous fear that by quitting it, I wouldn't be able to write. And the biggest gift that I got, I think, out of the last couple of years was when I got sober again and the pandemic hit. I wrote about 25 or 30 songs, and the songs that I wrote wound up being on the Strawberry Mansion record. And I did that in lockdown, sober as can be. And whether people, whether that record sold, a lot of copies or people liked it or not, thank goodness some people seem to like it.
Phenomenal record.
So I don't mean to say I care about it, but I do care. I want it to connect. But I was given the gift that just remember, man, you can do this sober, and look at kind of the proficiency that it's happening, in the state. So,
it's interesting that you're able to become that proficient and notice the lack of proficiency without anxiousness, and maybe that is a signal to that is why you are, in my opinion, one of the greatest songwriters of the last 20 years, because that anxiousness has been there to push you along. Our cortisol, the body's stress hormone, is highest in the morning to get us up, to get us going, to get us moving. And that anxiousness of a deadline or wanting to complete something, there's a reason we biologically, over a couple million years, have created this system that gets something pumping that makes us move.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting I think the cortisol, or the thing that was pumping to get me moving, was starting to come back to life, because I was so numbed, or just so like, out of whack for so long, that I think it was that, mixed with all of the energy and everything that was happening in the outside world, which was the pandemic, the political situation, protests, and there was so much, the tornado here, there was so much happening. And then for the first time in my life, and not to say I was without anxiety, I certainly wasn't, but we all were forced to be whatever our version of still. It was a lot more still than I've ever been. Not to say I was sitting here doing this, but I was just at home, and sort of for the first time finding an adventure that can be the adventure of stillness, the adventure of a domesticated life, which even that term, it still makes me feel like, oh, that's some scary shit. So it was a combination of different things. I mean, I don't know, but since then, and I think this is an interesting part the experience of anybody who's creative in any way too, is like, as that spurt of inspiration or whatever you want to call it was happening, after every song that I would finish, I would get this hit of fear. That's probably the last one. And then the next day, this was like almost daily that I was starting or finishing a song for a period, and then this fear that it would be the last one. Then it was the last one until I write some again. And when I get into that space of, well, where basically I just want it to always be happy. I want that kind of whatever that zone is. We want that to always be there. And at least for me, it's not always there. And how to kind of not have. I know I'm pulling from all parts of the conversation here, I guess, but
please.
It's like not having the way that I see myself, all my self-worth in that part of who I am, because when that isn't there, when I'm not accessing that place, or it's not being shown to me, or however that all works, I still must be alive and living and not putting it all into, the way that I see myself into that. So that's an interesting thing to continue to navigate for me as well. If I'm being honest, I still do put so much of, I think I see myself so much in that space, that when I'm not engaged fully in it, I can feel a bit lost or a bit cravey. Yeah.
There's one of my favorite essayist thinkers. He's actually probably best known for being a great startup investor, but he's one of the smartest philosophers, I think, living, is this guy Paul Graham, and he writes these great essays on life. Some of it has to do with startups, a lot of it has to do with life. And one of his essays is "Keep Your Identity Small," and in it he talks specifically about the religious wars between programming languages and software development. It's like whatever language you love, now you feel like I need to jump into every skirmish, every argument about that.
Right.
And he extrapolates that towards your actual religion, or your political identity, or your geographical identity. You're a Dallas Cowboys fan. And he basically just says, you attach yourself to all these things, you're just asking for conflict in more and more worlds, instead of keeping your identity small, where you can fluidly move, you have freedom, versus you've got like a tent, 8 stakes in the ground of like, no, but I'm over here, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and I sit over here as a far left Democrat, and I sit over here as XYZ. This episode is also brought to you by ChargeBee. Imagine this. You're launching your subscription product and you need to invoice your first few customers. You integrate with a payment gateway, write some code to support recurring billing, and you start charging things up. Stuff seems to work until you need to create tax-compliant invoices or set up flexible trials and run pricing experiments. Yikes. Or integrate with more than one gateway. Yoinks! Billing needs grow as business needs grow. Every line of code you write for your billing system contributes to the spaghetti nightmare that will keep you away from your core product. Don't do that. ChargeBee is here to help. We replace in-house billing systems and spreadsheets by giving teams the ability to set up subscription plans and trials, run pricing experiments at scale, analyze accurate subscription analytics, accept multiple payment methods, and much, much more right out of the box. ChargeBee works with global payment gateways like Stripe, Braintree, PayPal, everybody, and integrates with essential tools like HubSpot, Baremetrics, Xero, QuickBooks, Salesforce, and much more. ChargeBee, ChargeBee, ChargeBee. The journey to the first million is often the hardest. To help you get there faster, we're offering free access to ChargeBee's Rise plan. This offer is valid until you hit your first $1 million in revenue. This is a meeting that goes back 2 weeks ago. Me and the CEO, I said, this isn't enough at $500K. This isn't enough at $750. This offer should be valid until customers hit their first $1 million in revenue. And that's how we came to this decision. So you don't have to worry about billing and subscription management in the marathon that is running your business. To avail the services. Love that. I'm going to start using that phrase as often as possible. To avail the services. Sign up for a ChargeBee account with the link in our show notes for chargebee.com/partners. Sign up and enter your details with the coupon code BTL for below the line BTL. And then you complete your sign up within seconds. Super easy. ChargeBee rocks.
Well, I've been trying to lean into the motto or the idea of curiosity and confusion over certainty. And I'm able to do that in certain areas, and it's harder for me to do that in others.
Dude, I read a quote the other day. Someone said, we'd rather have death than uncertainty. Like it's so,
and it's true. We can see that clearly.
Yeah. So something you told me.
I'm comfortable with some elements of it, but I'm highly uncomfortable. I see that because in some, anyway.
No,
you were gonna say.
No. That's how have you cultivated comfort in that? I am still super uncomfortable in uncertainty.
Well, it depends on what the uncertainty is. It depends on what the subject is. Maybe it's easy to look at some things and that I can see some other people really planting their flags in the fucking ground about it. And I'm just like, how could you be so, in my mind, how could you be so sure? Or how could you rally around? How do we godify all these men and these politics? To me, I don't get it. So it's easier for me to, I think, maybe to sit here and just, and think, well, I prefer curiosity and confusion because none of this shit makes any sense to me than to align myself with that team. But when it's things that are maybe more personal to me, I'm still pretty stubborn and set in some of my ways that are uncomfortable when I try to take a look at them and shake that up. It doesn't shake that easy.
It sounds like you're cultivating some comfort in not being singer, songwriter, performer. It sounds like you're saying you're okay with that being part of your identity, but I imagine 28-year-old Sean would be like, no, this is me. I'm this artist.
Well, here's the thing: is like when I was a younger person, I would I used to talk to older people or hang around with older people, and they'd be like, "Oh man, you're like an old soul. You have this self-awareness." And of course, I love to hear that. It made me feel so good and so cool. And what I learned is that I'm able to talk about certain things and wrap my head around certain concepts, and I get off on the conversation, but actually putting it into action in my life, if self-awareness is step 1 or step 2 or whatever, it's a huge effing step for me to get to whatever the next step is. And so to have the conversation about identity and this interest in peeling that back and, even in creativity, I see creativity as has many arms, like addiction. We were talking about that before, but if we're all born singers, dancers, drawers, all this sort of thing. And then, in my case, I get some attention for singing and playing guitar. My interest goes mainly into this arm. It becomes my career, then my identity. Then there's still these other arms that are there, but I'm not utilizing them as much. And they don't fall off, but they're just sort of hanging out. So I'm interested in accessing all of that. I'm interested in not just being this Langhorne Slim singer-songwriter guy, as my full identity. But I think it takes a little bit of time and probably desire to live in the uncertainty and the confusion of all that and to peel that shit back. So yeah, I enjoy talking about it, but that doesn't mean that I'm like killing it in that breaking down the ego and the identity department.
Well, I think it's it at least allows for oxygen for better creativity. At least I've seen that in my own life, of removing this the largeness of my identity. Keep the identity
Mm.
small. It allows this freedom, even within the discipline that I might be removing it from. As I think the thing that I've probably done better than anything else is investing in creators and startups. And yet I don't think of myself as a startup investor at all. And therefore I don't tie myself in conversations of like, these are interesting sectors I'm looking at or spaces. I'm always like, I barely know what I'm doing. And that
Yeah,
it
it,
leaves a lot of growth, instead of being like, I know what I'm doing. Let me tell you what I'm doing. This is the thing I'm good at.
yeah. I know, just for anything in my life, when I'm holding on so tight, it blocks whatever else might be able to come into the, like, I heard somebody talk about being in the studio making a record, and and people were getting so, fixed on the ideas, and it was getting so tense, and the whole thing, and somebody was just like, you're not leaving room for God to come into the room, into the space. Now, whatever one thinks of, God can throw some people here or there, but I like that idea, because I find that when I'm able to surrender a little bit, release control a little bit, let down my guard a little bit, there is space for other energy, for whatever else that is, to kind of come onto that divine dance floor and boogie down a little bit.
Well,
So,
it's a great segue into something I wanted to ask you about, which is creating something as simple that you've done so many times you probably forgot it more than most will ever know it. But something that is unique about a singer-songwriter is you get to create these creations like a painter over and over again, maybe different than a gardener, different than a startup founder, where it might be a 3-year journey to create before you're like, okay, now version 1 is done. And as a songwriter, I want to ask you about creating a song and then about performing. On the creation of a song, from a complete layman has no idea what goes into that, would you describe like one of those 30 songs where you're like, damn, I love the way this sounds, from where it starts? Do you know exactly how it's going to sound? Do you know, like, this is, walk me through it literally as if I'm 5 years old, of creating a
well,
song
it's
that you were happy with.
different for different periods of time in my life and different albums and stuff. Like, this batch of songs was more stream of conscious kind of writing, probably than I'd ever done. It was just kind of, it almost felt like, and I don't keep a journal or a diary, I probably should, but it sort of felt like that. And with this group, I did some editing on the backside, but it was mainly almost kind of like a dump, a flow that came through and out. I know that sounds, I don't know how that sounds, but that's how it felt. And I don't try to understand all that stuff,
No, tell me everything specific, even what you just said. What do you mean by I don't try to understand all that stuff? I think people like me will think, writing a song is very scientific, or very just like, the chords, the notes. That, like,
I think it's just different for different people. Like, I've read interviews with songwriters who sit down in the morning and they go to work. I've never done it like that. So there are just times where I could just feel the energy or their spirit or something around that is kind of almost like a guide to some music. And with that 25, 30 songs, that's kind of what it felt like. It sort of felt like I was invited into a space to create. And yeah, verses would just it kind of occurred to me, and the music was there. This one came, not to say it was all easier. I didn't work hard to get the songs, but some of them were definitely, they just kind of appeared. But before there was an audience, there was always an audience in my head. I was always playing, at Madison Square Garden in my mind. So there's that component, but it was all also always for me and what felt good and something that was in there that had to come out. I don't know. And so that was the exercise really that I was trying to implement or stay true to, was keep it simple and follow, just go, just spit it out. You could worry about it later, or maybe you don't have to worry about it at all. And there was something else interesting in that as I was writing these songs, I wasn't expecting that the songs, like I'd said before, I hadn't really written hardly any songs for about a year prior during the relapse and stuff. And then when the songs came, life's always pretty wild, but it was so wild that there was no intention or expectation to turn these songs into a record, to tour on them. There was nothing other than finding comfort and getting out some shit, and sort of almost being in awe that there was this music that was felt like almost being offered to me to have in my house with my cat and my friend. My friend is a songwriter, and she was super perceptive and sensitive to music and stuff. So she would maybe hear a line or a little riff and be like, "Oh, what's that one? Is that you?" And so, if I'm around people who can kind of hear something and say, "Oh," make a comment, I'm like, okay, maybe I might be onto something. So maybe I would follow that, or
is it?
Yeah, it's maybe why I used a lot of drugs and alcohol and other things in my life that now I'm trying to get to that place without that stuff, is to my mind. And like you were talking about the navigation device looking for the problem. Well, my mind, it feels like that, but it also feels like often it's just loud and chaotic. And there's times people be like, "Oh, it seems like you've got a lot going on up there." And I'll be like, "Man, it doesn't feel like I got anything." It's like, it's so loud that there isn't one thing that I can focus on. So now at my age and where I'm at in my life, it's to try to figure out ways to quiet my mind naturally. And and kind of just focus on the flow, or not get in my own way. It's so easy for us to get, if creativity ever feels like you're kind of hate to talk about it, but I don't know the other words. If it ever feels like you're channeling something, or something is kind of flowing through you, if we're writing through a stream of conscious or whatever it might be, in cooking and painting and whatever, in tech stuff, whatever it might be, for me at least, it's when my mind really clicks on, and the kind of like is it good? Is it bad? Oh, that's good. That's not good. That's when I feel like that's when I sabotage the deal. So how do I keep in the from wherever that is coming from, and kind of at least turn that volume down enough where I'm not where it's like what I think that that reading that you shared makes me feel like, even if I'm mishearing it or something, it's like, who am I to get in the way of this thing, or to judge it that it's good or bad?
Right.
And am I already worried as I'm sitting on my couch whether or not somebody is going to deem it good or bad? Like, that seems so ridiculous. And yet I have the capability of doing that, of worrying that some stranger out there or some person isn't going to like something that I'm just sitting here to do it. How about just do it because it feels good to make these noises?
Yeah, there's this meme going around that I saw on Twitter of basically the beginner says, "Why do you do what you do?" And the beginner's like, "Because it feels good." And the expert has
Right.
the exact same response of because it feels good. And it's this, and it's kind of as the Zen, as the Buddhists say, it's beginner's mind, expert's mind. They're the same. And yet there's this intermediary in the middle of like, oh, well, let me give you this convoluted, big, complex reason of why I do what I do and why, at 6 I had this experience, and it's like, maybe it's just as simple as because it feels good to me.
I think sometimes it is, yeah.
The last area that I wanted to ask you about is in performing. Something you said maybe 4 or 5 years ago to me, and you probably don't even remember saying this, but you said, I was asking you about what's something you learned as an expert in live performance. It was we were doing that the small intimate concert underground in San Francisco, and I asked you what's something that you know as an expert that you had no idea as a beginner with when it comes to performing live. This is right before you were about to go on. And you said, well, now I really look for a happy accident in each performance. And I said, what do you mean by that? You're like, I want something to go wrong because then it creates a moment. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was something so cool. Put me on a mind trip that I've actually told other artists this, musicians. I've been like, yeah, I heard Langhorne Slim told me one time that he wants a happy accident to happen. It seems like it's the exact opposite of what you'd want is something to go wrong, but you seem to, I mean, you said it so quickly as if you like wanted something that night to go slightly wrong so that you could create magic.
At this point, I think I just wouldn't say that it was wrong. I think something, it's why like my band very seldomly has used or followed, if we wrote one, a set list. And haven't spent a whole ton of time practicing together. A lot of time practicing on stage in front of people at shows, for better or for worse. I think that, I don't know, maybe that just goes back to like punk rock music that I grew up loving or something. But whether or not it's an accident, if it's all scripted, if a live performance is all scripted, I don't get off on it or connect with it as much. And then, like, I just went to see what I imagine is a very scripted show, David Byrne on Broadway. I got to go and see that a couple months ago. And there was, I don't remember exactly what happened. The show was phenomenal, by the way. And all the scripted parts were beautiful. But there was something that he messed up. I can't remember what, if it was in a song. And you're like, there's something that makes it very raw and real and human. I don't know, that you connect to. So I don't know. It's also something with playing a lot of the same songs for years and years and still enjoying it. It has to just be a little, you have to be able to, for me personally, if I'm doing it all the same way every night, I maybe start to not believe myself. And that's a very unpleasant place for me to be.
What do you mean by that? For a layman that has no idea what it's like to perform.
I mean that if I was calling them happy accidents or looking for an accident or something like that, it's not that I want, okay, well, for example, there's been times where we were playing in like small clubs and people will still talk to me about this years later. I don't even know that I remembered it. Other people helped me remember it, of like, man, we were at that show and the sound crapped out and you took everybody outside and there was 50 people and we all sat outside in the in the whatever backyard and you played the show. And so it's like, well, so the sound could go out and you could get all pissed off and the show could be over and everybody has that experience. I went to see this show, sound went out, show's over, that venue sucks, the band sucks, whatever. And instead you go outside and it makes it even more connected. So you're celebrating that thing and you're all in this sort of, it sucked that I messed up the time today, but I will say there was some kind of like rushing back to the house and that made it like more on fire. Like it made it feel more alive in a way. And I do apologize for being late and I never want to waste people's time. But there's another side to all that too, where it's like, I'm not saying look for the happy accident and be late for shit, but maybe that was a good example to throw out there of like 10, 15 years later, people will come out to a show and be like, man, I was at that show that there was 37 people and you took us out in the backyard and the band played for two, whatever it was.
Yeah, it is the most humanizing. There can be a lot of distance, and maybe this is the amateur versus the professional, but there can be a lot of distance created between a performer and the audience. And in some ways, the whole setup is to create that distance. And yet it's also the canvas for a professional, the expert, to come in and take away that, maybe acoustically, this is where the band needs to be, but it's and visually, but it also take away that distance.
It also depends so much on the performance and on the performer and on the style, all this sort of thing. Like my whole thing has always been, and I'm not shy to say, I've always wanted to perform in front of a lot of people, but I never wanted it to feel. I never have gotten comfortable with. No, my cat's gonna start wilding out. With the big stage and the barriers, and then the audience back there. Maybe because I'm needy as a performer, but also because I don't feel as much. So for me, whether it's a bigger crowd or a smaller crowd, to be open to whatever kind of comes, to make it's mainly for me, honestly, sort of selfishly, because I don't feel like I can tap into the thing into the feeling that makes me feel that connection.
Yeah.
With that separation. So I'm always looking for ways to get there, whether it be a big crowd, small crowd, sound equipment working, sound equipment not working. But I guess just to go back to with what you were saying, if it is the same every single night, and I don't mean to take away from people that do it that way, because they're able to find the thing that they're, it takes all kinds, obviously. For me, it's got to be a little bit different, and there has to be room for not even non-scripted things, but just different avenues to take in the performance, so that maybe you can, you could fall flat on your face sometimes, but sometimes it when it happens and it really works, it breaks through some other kind of next level of performance.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, there's this art form in the French art form objective, which is like taking a block of wood, and the idea is for the artist to say, what does this block of wood want to become? And it sounds similar to like this evening. There's going to be a whole number of variables that are outside of just me and my guitar, the speakers, and what does this evening want to become, and going with that. Kind of like what you were saying of, maybe that's why that phrase resonated with you, of like, don't grip so hard that you can't let God come into the record making process.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's more room to play if you can be open to that stuff, or else certain elements won't go as you hope, and you'll perceive them as being negative or a disaster or something.
Oh, so, God. I think that's why it was so fascinating when you said that, is just you'd think, okay, something going wrong. It was so cool to hear it right before you went up on stage. And again, just your storytelling between songs is so beautiful. I've seen so many, I'm sure you have too, seen so many artists that don't do that very well. And that it was just the whole, each performance I've seen with big crowds, with that small one, they've been powerful, but it was really cool to go into it being like, whoa, this dude's waiting for something to go wrong. He's kind of wanting something to go wrong, 5 minutes in, 8 minutes. When's it going to happen? And it was a very big flip of my mindset of he's looking to get closer, versus with the thing that I think most of us would say, I hope nothing goes wrong, because that's going to add distance or embarrassment or shame in this performance. And you were just going into it, kind of looking for it. And I don't even remember if one happened.
I still wanted to go my way, James. I
What's
still
that?
wanted to work out.
Well, and that's probably the proficiency and the expertise, is knowing that you have all of the surface area to make mistakes and boom, bring it into the fold, or something goes wrong and you bring it into the fold and you said, okay, this is a moment of humanity that couldn't have been created if I tried to script it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sean, dude, thank you so much for the generosity of time and insight that you shared with everything from the deeply personal to the creation of music to just what it's been like during the pandemic and being proficient in realms without the expectation. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And where can people find out about the tour and more about you online?
Oh, it's just Langhorne Slim. Langhorne Slim Music is the website, and then I'm on that dirty old Instagram too, and the tour dates and all that stuff are easy to find if you want to come out. And yeah, I leave for maybe by the time this airs, I don't know if I'll be on tour anymore, but there will be more shows after that.
Whoa.
But yeah, I'm easy to find if you look. But James, thanks so much. Always a pleasure, and grateful for your friendship, brother.
Likewise, Sean. Looking forward to many more chats, and thank you for sharing this one with the wider world.
Indeed, brother. Until next time.
Until next time.
On behalf of me and Mr. Beautiful, we'll see you soon.